Dallisa Hocking here, fifth generation psychic medium, and I have the immense pleasure of bringing Ari Moshe Wolfe onto today's episode. We have a really big episode today, and Ari has just been delightful in previous recordings that we've done. I have watched information that he's put out about astrology. Ari knows about what we're dealing with and how we can work with this energy. And this is an episode I feel like you're going to want to watch it, pay attention to it, but this may be one you even rewatch. So I'm delighted. Let me tell you a little bit more about Ari and then we'll get started. Ari is going to have the topics of Saturn moving into Pisces and Pluto moving into Aquarius. Now, even if you have no idea what that means, we're going to tell you how it applies to your life. So make sure you stay tuned and share this episode with your friends and your family. Ari Moshe Wolfe is an evolutionary astrologer, musician, and devoted seeker of truth. Yes, Ari practices astrology as a tool for spiritual awakening. His teaching is rooted in the beautiful lineage of evolutionary astrology as taught by Jeffrey Wolf Green and continues to blossom with his own ongoing realization. Ari also deeply draws upon the wisdom for the teachings of Course in Miracles, and brings his music with him wherever he goes. You can learn more about Ari, his offerings, his music, and his services on his website, arimoshe.com. I'll include the link in the show notes below so you can easily connect with Ari. And Ari also is offering an astrology course right now. So if you really resonate with what is discussed today, just know that that's also in the show notes. And I encourage you to register ASAP. And you can use my coupon code Dallisa to save $50 on that astrology course. So Ari, you have a lot to talk about today. Two massive astrological events that are occurring they're going to affect everyone. So, what are you sensing? What are you seeing? What's going on in the world?
All right. Well, hello, Dallisa. Hello, everyone. I love the way you read my bio, but I actually felt myself like, ooh, wow, it's so beautiful lineage of evolutionary astrology. I felt it in your. So, what I'm going to be speaking about right now is both the ingress of Saturn, the ingress of Pluto, and also what's their relationship to one another. And I want to start by just giving a perspective on this. So, it's very easy when we look at astrology to, in a sense, compartmentalize all the different parts. Like, oh, there's my Mercury self and the deep, dark, uncomfortable Pluto self and like the, disciplined Saturn self. And these are, but we really want to look at our life, ourself, this human experience from a unified lens. And this is really kind of what I've received through the practice of evolutionary astrology. It's about looking at everything in our life from the point of view of the soul's ongoing journey, the soul's journey of self-remembering, of self-realization. And so every part of our human experience has absolute meaning and purpose. So we can think of this in terms of our body, our personal life experiences, and our natal chart. For everything to be in our own natal chart points to a whole story, right? Everything is relevant to who we are as a soul. So when we look at our life as a soul, and when I say soul, I'm saying like, this is what we are when you take away the body, our identifications, our personality, our personal human memories, that which we essentially are, we can say, prior to, during, and after the manifestation of this particular human experience. That's what I mean when I say soul. When we're looking at ourselves as this infinite being, remembering itself, everything in the chart, everything in our life points back to that. So I want to start by looking at the transits with that perspective, because there's an inherent relationship between Saturn and Pluto. And whenever we sort of begin to unlock and sort of catch these inherent relationships, suddenly our perspective of astrology and our perspective of the transits changes entirely. we begin to see a much larger picture, and we begin to access a more intimate awareness of what's really unfolding within our own selves. So I was thinking of this just when we began. Saturn and Pluto probably both are the most similar in terms of how we tend to look at them. Okay, we both think of them and associate death, right? Saturn is associated with death in terms of timing. Everything in physical reality has its duration, right? And that's what Saturn's all about. Saturn corresponds to anything that can be defined, anything that can be measured, and thus that which is conditioned. That which is conditioned over time, and it will become deconditioned. It will eventually fall apart. It will decay. So the body grows and is conditioned, but then also the body will eventually fall apart. It will decay as well. Jobs, relationships, anything that has form exists for a time, and Saturn is time. So it's a very important thing to understand about Saturn in the sense that it does correspond to death and endings in a very practical, real sense, like not well, in a very practical, tangible, like earthly way. Okay. Pluto, we can say, is actually a little bit more real in the sense that it doesn't necessarily correspond to the death of structure and form. It corresponds to the death of identifications. And so Pluto we can think of as the bottom line. It is where, on a deeper subconscious level for all of us, right? This is in our natal chart. This is in transit. It says there are desires that we're all playing out. There are inner dynamics wanting to be revealed and integrated. We're all drawn towards human experience. And we're all going to find within these human experiences certain cravings and attachments and aversions, things that we really want, things that we really don't want. And embedded within all of these object attachment or aversions, whether it's a person or an experience or wanting to have a certain kind of job or to be seen by others in a certain way, like whatever the human object focus is, embedded in it is a deep soul level growth, is awareness of who we are, power that we have inside of ourselves that we have yet to realize. So from a Pluto point of view, we're drawn into life experience and we say, I really am attracted to this person. And so maybe we get into this relationship. But what happens? We're osmosing something through the experience of relationship and taking it into ourselves. That's really what sexual attraction is as well. I want to get close, but it's like we don't get quite close enough, because ultimately what we're seeking to merge with is something that we're actually wanting to experience within. And that's the deeper teaching of all human experience. Now, everything that we form a relationship with, whether it's challenging, whether it's beautiful and easy, at some point we also have to let go of it. And that's Pluto. Pluto is marriage and divorce, both. And it's very important that we understand that, because every single human experience that will initiate growth, where we're going to access deeper power or even uncomfortable experiences that we feel anger or hatred or revenge, doesn't matter what it is, there's information in it. There's deep power and remembering in every experience. And if we stay there too long, right? If we hold on to it for too long, oh, I don't want to let go, it feels so good. Or one partner is no longer interested. No, I can't embrace this change. I need you, right? Or we're just stuck on resentment, whatever it might be. We don't allow ourselves to continue to evolve. So Pluto is evolution, and evolution is implicit to death. The caterpillar has to be completely destroyed. So on the level of our identifications and attachments, Pluto says what we are most dependent upon. that which provides the greatest amount of emotional security at some point needs to be released. And that's not always easy. That's not always comfortable. Okay. So we have the idea of death associated with both Saturn and Pluto. Let's take a moment and understand what is their inherent relationship. And this is a very, very helpful and important point of understanding. When we understand that this human life is created for the purpose of experience, and the purpose of the experience is to evolve, which means we got to go full in, have experience, become self-aware, and let go when it's time to let go. Ongoing journey. And just tangentially, this is a process of evolution and involution, right? Caterpillar, you play it out, it comes to its point where there's an evolutionary limitation. You have to now move on. Chrysalis, involution, you've let go of the old form. It's sort of it could be a tender time. It's a very yin time. And we haven't yet come into the new form. We have to allow this impersonal force of evolution to do its thing. We have to trust it. We have to cooperate with it, not resist it. And then butterfly, new form. Okay. That's what this life is all about. And we're always going through these phases in some way. It might feel like there are these bigger evolutionary processes where we're just facing this deeply uncomfortable psychological content, addictions, patterns, and we don't know how to get out of it. But there's a process there, and there's something on the other end, right? It can be slow change. It can be you listen to a video and you have this realization, oh yeah, I'm going to become an astrologer. I'm going to do this. I'm going to practice this. And that's an evolutionary transition. It's happening all the time in either, challenging or maybe comfortable ways. But that's what this life is about, to keep on going. The purpose of this life is to live it, to engage it, to learn, to grow, to remember. When we understand and think of our life with that perspective as that foundation, we then look at Saturn and we ask the question from a soul perspective, what is the purpose of form? What is the purpose of time? What is the purpose of space? Because it's very, very easy when we look at Saturn to get stuck in a sort of materialism. That materialism will be, love and healing is great, but I got to pay the bills, right? Or more culturally, how we're all conditioned by certain social ideas that say, well, this is what men do. This is what it's like. This is what your role in relationship, or this is just how it's supposed to be, or constructs where we associate various parameters and constructs of form and time as like absolute reality. And so it's very easy to forget that all, and I mean all, structures, all manifestations of form and time and space exist for a reason. And I want to define them. And this is the fundamental way in which I look at Saturn. All form, all structure is a very temporary learning container within which we are playing out our soul's evolutionary purpose. Okay, so 11th grade, 12th grade, college, whatever reality we're in at the time, there's a curriculum, right? There is a particular template through which we are learning. We can say the form of the curriculum will look differently according to the templates that we're working with, but the essence of it is the same. It's evolution. And depending on what kind of experiences we're needing, we could really understand Saturn through the lens of how, for our unique soul reality, have we chosen to create a structural reality, a template within time and space to hold parameters through which we are going to continue our awakening. And thus, we need to respect the particular parameters and limitations of form, of time and space that are here for us. Right? If you're in high school and you're in 11th grade, you have to respect that. You can't live as if you're a 60-year-old retired millionaire who lives on a yacht, however you say that word, yacht. You have to be in 11th grade and study, pass the tests. And if you do that, you'll pass the grade and you'll graduate. And what happens with Saturn, on a small and on a large level, we have experiences. And these experiences imply, as long as we're an earthly time and space experience, every experience is also going to equal and be enclosed within a limitation, within a parameter. For all of us, we share certain ones, like we all have a body. We're all experiencing the limitations of gravity. And then we all exist within a particular country, society. These are all culture. These are all Saturn words. Okay. And then on a more personal level, we all have individual dynamics. Some of us are going to need to really focus our attention on, health dynamics or making money or really working at particular karmic dynamics. Karmic dynamics mean parameters and limitations that we can't ignore. We have to face them within relationships or whatever, or a job. So really yielding ourselves to them, allowing it to be exactly where they are. One of the Saturn pitfalls is trying to get ahead too quickly, not showing up for the work that's needed now. It means patience, wisdom, really allowing ourselves to appreciate, okay, if I can really meet these challenges, meet these lessons, meet these parameters, and cultivate wisdom and alignment, then I can master them and move on from them. That's one pattern. The other pattern is to sort of be fearful, like, oh, I need to make sure I'm always on time, or I need to make sure that I have enough money, where the measures of time space experience become meaningful on their own. Then we're not really going to learn from them. We're not going to see that structure itself doesn't have meaning on its own. It itself only serves the purpose of serving the purpose of evolution. And this is a quote from A Course in Miracles that I often share with Saturn. It says, and this might be a little bit of a paraphrase, the purpose of time is to learn how to use time purposefully. When it is no longer needed, it will no longer exist. And I love that perspective, because then it invites a stance of agency and thoughtfulness relative to every facet of our life that says, oh, I'm not a slave to anything here. The conditions or challenges of my life are not defining me or limiting me. Rather, they exist as a way to continue and engage my ongoing evolutionary process. And so time is on my side and it's here to be used. And if I work with it within the parameters of the particular learning template of my human life, I'm going to meet and engage the greater evolutionary journey that I'm here for. So we can understand Saturn relative to Pluto. And in fact, if we really just kind of take some time to understand what this life is about, we can think of every single planetary function in the natal chart and in transit relative to Pluto. That might seem like a far out statement, but if we understand that Pluto is about evolution, and evolution itself is what creates and brings us into human experience, it then reshapes and formulates a more holistic understanding of what every facet of our human life is for, why we are here. And I'll add one more dimension. Since we're looking at Pisces, Saturn in Pisces, it's helpful to bring Neptune into the mix. And I want to just paint this picture because it'll help us understand what I'm describing a little more holistically. We can say that Neptune is the truth with the capital T. Like Neptune is absolute reality. Neptune is love. Neptune is what we are. It is the true nature of reality. And we can all access or experience a Neptunian experience where the time and space parameters fall away for a moment and there are miracles and all kinds of amazing things happen, and we can experience a deep sense of forgiveness or unconditional love. And we are all going to be drawn back to our evolutionary program, right? We will only sustain that Neptune abiding experience of oneness to the extent that we have evolved. So we're always going to come back to, okay, that was an experience, an illumination. We're going to have to integrate that and continue to do our evolutionary work. Pluto. And that's what I want to really emphasize here. In the end of the day, we have the phrase evolutionary necessity, which is we are where we are, and we have to just walk this path and evolve and wake up. What we're arriving at fundamentally is knowledge of what we are, and we can say that's Neptune, but we have to engage this journey Pluto, and thus we have to meet our life experience with absolute willingness and devotion to recognize no matter what's going on, there is healing, there is purpose, there is greater meaning and potential within our human life experience. So this is my little introduction to understanding Saturn with Pluto. Then I would like to speak to just moving it in.
Like introduction. I'm over here like soaking this all in, and there's so much richness in what you've already shared. So a couple of the things that have stood out to me that I just want to circle back on for everyone listening. The butterfly metaphor, I think, is a good representation, at least from my perspective, of what's going on. The caterpillar doesn't know necessarily that it's going to turn into this butterfly, but the process itself can be, incredibly painful in some regards, but that it's leading the caterpillar into this beautiful being of the butterfly. That was one thing that stood out to me. Another thing I wrote down was perhaps this is the breaking down, which is leading to more incredible or profound breakthroughs. And the Neptune information that you brought in was great, because sometimes I think of Neptune as illusion, delusion, getting stuck in trying to figure out what's real, what's not real. And what you shared about it being truth with a capital T, and Neptune almost representing or representing all that is, I felt was a good reframing of Neptune. Would those reflections be aligned with what you're feeling with what you've shared so far?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, beautiful. I'll let you take the reins again, but one of the things I know that folks watching this are going to perhaps ask would be, when is this happening? Because they're hearing breakdown to breakthrough, or disillusion of things that they've had structure around, perhaps. They may want to know when and how long, who's going to be affected. Are some people affected more than others, or is this just going to affect everyone? And I know you do readings, astrology readings, and people can absolutely come to you to discuss how this is showing up for their lives individually. But anything around when and how this is going to appear, I think, would be helpful.
Great. Well, both Saturn enters Pisces and Pluto enters Aquarius in the month of March. Saturn a little earlier, the first week, and then I think Pluto is the last week. Now, Pluto is going to be moving back and forth until the end of 2024. So Pluto enters Aquarius, goes retrograde. We got some big Pluto transits happening. Maybe we'll touch upon it coming up later this year. I mean, it's strong. So this Pluto in Aquarius is a strong transit, but it's actually a transitional time for a good 18 months, you can say. And actually, Saturn will be in Pisces for about 2.5 years. So for the majority of the time that Saturn's in Pisces, Pluto will be in this transition point, which I think is really interesting. I want to point out too that, we had this big Saturn-Pluto conjunction back in 2020 or something, right, in Capricorn. So Saturn has passed Pluto. Saturn moves faster than Pluto. And it's now 30 degrees. It's a whole sign ahead. This is significant, right? And for the duration of the next 2.5 years, it's going to be moving from a 30-degree separation to a 60-degree separation. The more space any two planets create from one another, in particular if we're dealing with an outer planet like Pluto, the more we begin to see its actual nature, right? We have more objective vision. We can see what's actually unfolding. So in our own personal lives, and I'll define this in a moment, there is something that's beginning to crystallize and take more concrete form. The 30-degree aspect, again, from Aquarius to Pisces, 30 degrees, actually is a very important turning point in a cycle where there are significant adjustments to make. And oftentimes we're going to be met with a sense of, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to make these changes. This is too much, too confusing. How do we work this out? We just have to take the next step, and a new form is coming together. So for everyone, this first week of March, as Saturn is entering Pisces, it's not going to go back into Aquarius. It's in Pisces. It's going to be there for a while. Let me speak to two dimensions. First, what's the basic intention? And how is this going to manifest in our own charts? What is a framework for us to understand this in our own lives? Saturn in Pisces, remembering that Saturn is form and time and space, and thus our disciplining relative to that, how we are using and relating to and yielding to the parameters of our life in a way that is helpful to our growth. When we apply that into Pisces, we are disciplining our relationship to spirit, to meaning with a capital M. We are learning to spiritualize and orient our relationship to structure in a way that brings us into greater alignment with our deeper spiritual inspiration. So, ruled by Neptune, we can really understand Pisces as where we are co-creators with the divine. And our inspiration, our greater dreams, the innocence of how we are each naturally yearning and called to be an extension of the one, right? The Pisces archetype speaks to, and wherever Pisces is in our chart, ultimately speaks to where we have the potential to embody and be an extension of unconditional love, which means our life itself, our life becomes directed and oriented towards absolute meaning, where it's not about like my personal happiness in a that. It says knowing who we are and living a life where we're experiencing and connecting to the love that we are becomes a way of extending that in the world. So it's all about service, unconditional love, and forgiveness, and a purification and healing of separation. In that, Pisces can easily represent in our chart where there is either absolute confusion, where we're putting meaning towards something that has no meaning. Right? Now, this idea of, let's say you have Pisces in the 6th house. My body is supposed to be perfect health. And then you experience a health crisis and you don't know why you're experiencing this health crisis. You can't quite, it's a very common issue, Pisces in the 6th. I can't quite diagnose what's going on. And so we can feel victimized, we can feel disillusioned, we can feel deeply sad or a sense of despair, like there's something fundamentally wrong with my life. And we can pray and ask for guidance, ask for love, ask for support, and find that we are just always falling short of some kind of greater healing or meaning, right? Trying all the different diets. And so what's the deeper teaching of Pisces in the 6th house? Really, it says, what's the body for? Right? We can think about healing the body or, making it feel better, but what's it for? What's its purpose? So from a Pisces point of view, we're spiritualizing everything. We're giving everything back to a purpose not of our own making. And so then there's a devotional relationship where we say, I'm here to be an extension of love. Use my body for that. And, and then it's a guidance. We might be called during to walk certain paths and diets or practices or not. And this is where the seeming solidity of the world can sort of break up when we realize all of the rules, all of the laws that we see, that's Saturn. They're just temporary, right? Pisces says, if you want to tell the mountain move, it'll move. Anything with a capital A and a capital T is possible with Pisces. And I'm saying anything is possible because this whole world is just a created forum for experience. But reality itself, love itself is infinite. It's prior to experience, it's prior to time. And so Time doesn't limit reality. Time doesn't limit love. Anything can happen. It's really important we recognize that with Pisces. So it's like the whole paradigm of our life can completely change and be illuminated. It really points back to our relationship. And there can be a very fine line here between like a sense of emptiness and mundanity, where you're just kind of trudging through life moment to moment and it's heavy and meaningless, and you flick the switch. I think Jeff Green once described it as you flick the switch, and suddenly there's illumination. It can happen very quickly when we shift our inner orientation towards that of meaning, towards that of holiness. Saturn entering Pisces says you have to practice that. So we can say spiritual growth, or being oriented towards love, or being oriented towards miracles. Learning to see our life through the lens of holiness, through the lens of service and healing and unification and forgiveness is going to take time. So this can really say two things. Saturn in Pisces can really significantly bring up where there's a feeling of really being stuck in conditions that have no answer. Like, this is really hard. I have no answer. According to my worldly knowledge of things, I have no answer for this. Feeling like we're in jail. Feeling like the constructs and limitations of our life are just defining us and holding us back. And so we can feel very, very small, very common Pisces feeling relative to Saturn, defeatism. Like the boss is having control over us. So it's like life, reality, whatever our circumstances are so much more powerful than ourselves. And we can't do anything. It's like nothing you do is gonna, and I often think of it as throwing a cup of water in the ocean. It's like no efforts I make matter. I'm working hard anyway, 3 jobs, a bunch of children, and I'm still just paying rent. Like, what's the point? What's the point, right? And we can look at different facets of society and culture in every single country. Saturn, we're going to have people at different levels of economic status. You're born into a particular family or a particular environment, and you're raised and you're conditioned a certain way. You might have wealth, you might have more education, you might have more privilege, you might have more resources available to you. We can look anywhere in society and say, well, geez, this person's never gonna get anywhere. Look at their conditions, or I'm never gonna get beyond this. I was given this when I was born. Right? I inherit an inheritance. From a Saturn perspective, is you come into a particular structural reality. You're gonna inherit whatever your parents gave you, right? The guilt, the conditioning, the way of thinking. Most souls grow up, and the religion you grew up with and the orientation you grew up with is what you're going to take with you into your life. And then for those that are evolving and really looking more deeply, they might question that and move out of that. But, we're all much more conditioned than we realize. We are all carrying assumptions and constructs of reality that we're projecting out there as absolute, a lot more than we realize. Often it takes sort of a shattering experience, or just going to a different culture even, to realize, ooh, wow, you don't have to do it that way. There's a degree to which we don't realize it until we get out of that environment. So the key, when we face the sense of heaviness, right, which could also be a feeling of pointlessness, a deep depression, a giving up. And I invite everyone to contemplate, if you have more knowledge of your chart, where is Saturn transiting? Where is early Pisces? And you always want to look at the ruler. Okay, so wherever Neptune is located in your natal chart, natally, this can speak to where things might be feeling very heavy and hard. Like we're just being defined by experiences and we have no control, where it might feel like we can't make any changes, we can't do anything. Okay. The other end of it, I should say, is where we might be, because of a deep sense of insecurity, or we might find ourselves trying to hold on to some sense of meaning. It's like Saturn in the 6th house. my body is strong and healthy and well, and we're just like replaying this wishful thinking in our mind, but it's not true. Like, we're not feeling that way. It's actually not, actually we're sick. Things aren't working out that way, right? Like Saturn in the second house, I am wealthy, and but it's like I'm not, and I'm struggling. Like, we can be delusional and even convince ourselves of a delusional Saturn in the seventh house in Pisces. My relationship with my partner is perfect. Like, we complete each other's sentences. They are my divine twin flame soul mate counterpart. Like, everything that I have been looking for is them, but they're not. It's like, it's just not like that. So on the other end of that is getting real. Saturn, people say Saturn is reality. Saturn is not reality. Neptune's reality, right? Saturn is actually very much not reality. Saturn is time and space. You want to call that reality? That's just like looking at like the tip of the iceberg and calling that the whole iceberg, right? It's a very important thing to understand. Saturn is how reality is almost like being realized through a particular template and limited form and structure. Okay, but Saturn is realism, being realistic in a sense. Yeah, realism, because it says, stop trying to pretend you're somewhere else. Meet your reality. That might mean meeting disillusionment, meeting disappointment, meeting your despair, meeting your depression, meeting that you don't know what to do, meeting a sense of, I don't have an answer for this. I don't know how to respond to this. And that's the beginning of humility. When we're willing to accept the conditions of our life and that we also need to learn, that we need support, we need instruction, this is when we actually begin to do the Saturn work, which is we learn the importance of being a disciple, right? Discipline is Saturn, being a disciple is Saturn. Being a disciple means we recognize that there's work to do and that we're young, that we have to mature and grow and develop strength. Now, Saturn strengthens anything it touches. So the idea here is to strengthen our commitment to spirituality or to meaning, or to realigning our life with something greater than ourselves. And as per Saturn, we can always turn towards the spiritual teachings, the traditions, those who have come before us that have taught the higher teaching. Now, we're all going to relate to that in our own way. For some of us, that might mean, if we have a strong relationship to a particular religion or religious cosmology, that might mean really turning towards that and taking it seriously, right? Or our spiritual practice or the teachers that we follow. It says, I'm going to really study these teachings. I'm going to see what is it like to apply these teachings in my life experience, right? Instead of creating some kind of separation between almost spirit and flesh. And that's what we're healing here. We're bringing forgiveness into the flesh. We're bringing forgiveness into form. So let's turn back to the seventh house, because this is fun. Saturn in Pisces in the seventh house, have this realization of, you know what? I actually don't know who my partner is. Or I've been idealizing this idea of relationship. Maybe we're not in a relationship, we're idealizing some, right? But I'm actually not experiencing that. I'm actually longing for something. I feel actually lonely. So like, let's not pretend and spray a nice spray over that. The teachings then become more about, what is it like to see another as an extension of the divine? And this means not idealizing other people, not wishing for or hoping for some kind of perfect relationship to save us and make us feel better. The question really becomes, with Saturn in the seventh house in Pisces, what does it mean to learn how to love? How can I take responsibility for seeing the other person as whole and unified, an extension of love? And that might mean really bringing up all of our conditions, all the ways in which we said, love looks this way or this form, or I can love you as long as you are this thing that I'm telling you you should be, or as long as I'm making myself this and you like me, I will feel really great about it all. All of these conditions have to fall out of the window. Saturn, we can say, is both the wise elder and also the child. The wise elder has learned from a life of experiences of failures and coming back and practicing and trying again and really learning how to live in alignment with greater purpose. The child hasn't learned that yet. And they're going to try to break the rules and do it their own way. Like when I'm dressing my daughter, she tries to do it her own way and then gets really frustrated when it doesn't work out and she can't get the shirt on. There's wisdom in giving her the space to try out if she wants to. But then when she gets really frustrated, I'm teaching her, if it's hard, ask for support. Let me help you. And we're all learning how to be humble about our need for instruction. Here, try putting it on this way over your head first and then put your arms in, right? And if we are willing to receive instruction, then as children, we can grow and evolve and minimize our struggle. Saturn says, go slow. Don't try to do it all on your own. Listen to the lessons. Now, what happens with Saturn in Pisces is we can say to our parents, now, in this case, let's say our parent is God, is reality, right? We can say, God, I want you to help me, and I want it to look this way. These are the conditions that I'm saying I need to be fulfilled. It doesn't always work that way because we're creating too many demands. It's like a child saying to its parent, build me a treehouse out of my bed. I want you to take my bed and put it in a treehouse. And the parent can't do that. You can't take a bunch of blankets and make a treehouse in a tree. The child doesn't really understand that you need wood, you need props to hold it up. You can maybe put a bed in the treehouse, but you can't just like put a bunch of blankets. It's going to get wet by the rain. It's not going to work out. And so the path of the fulfillment of our dreams, because the dreams and the inspiration is real, our plan and conditions for how it's going to work out are not. We don't know enough, right? So the co-creative relationship is giving ourselves full connection to this deep spark of spiritual awareness, spirit and spark, this connection to divine love and potential and purpose and possibility that we know in our hearts is possible, but then giving it over to our divine mother, father, and being in co-creative relationship, letting them lead the way. Because we don't understand, you have to get in the car, drive to the department store, buy some wood. We need money. We don't understand money. We don't understand nails and screwdrivers. These things are beyond our right, but we have to learn, and we'll learn as we allow a greater authority than ourselves to teach us. And that's Saturn in Pisces. Some of us might find ourselves playing that role of spiritual mentor, right? If we've grown and developed, we might feel that we're now graduating. That's a part of the journey. We might be doing that, and we also might find ourselves in the role of really being a disciple. We can be doing both in different areas of our life. So to close this piece, Saturn in Pisces ultimately says this is where in our life we're orienting everything towards greater meaning, and there is deep healing available. Anything could happen, but we have to practice and train our minds. We have to practice bringing our attention to a source of knowledge and understanding and awareness that is greater than our own making, and to recognize it is not through my works alone. It is not through my limited efforts and understanding and control and fear and conditions that I'm asserting that I will find what I'm needing, and that we will all, in a sense, find our greater joy and happiness. We have to allow a greater relationship. And so the key words are strengthening our trust, strengthening our devotion, strengthening our practice of forgiveness. And let me find another word for you here. It's strengthening our practice of following guidance. Right? And I'll just close this piece with saying, when we give ourselves to guidance, we could appreciate whatever path is given for us is the right path. It is not necessary that we go to the department store. In a sense, all of the wood can materialize like this. There's no reason why it couldn't for that treehouse. But however the greater plan is, however it is to unfold, is the best way for us, is the way we're going to learn. So yielding ourselves to the circumstances of our life, to the conditions, recognizing this is where I'm learning forgiveness. This is where I'm learning trust, even if it's not what I was hoping it would be. This is the place that I need. Everything is an extension of the greater will of one, even if I don't understand it. I once heard a dream message, a beautiful teaching that I received, which said, every experience is another angle through which to experience the unity of God's will. Every experience is another angle through which to experience the unity of God's will. That is such a beautiful teaching, right? So we practice applying these ways of thinking into even more and more areas of our life. Okay, that's Saturn in Pisces. Maybe I can pause there for a moment before I connect it with Pluto.
So let's talk about all the Aquarius, Pluto moving into Aquarius. So, and thank you for everything that you shared around Saturn moving into Pisces and what we can expect with that. But we have another big activity, big cycle happening with Pluto going into Aquarius. So can you briefly tell us what that's about?
Yes. So we don't have too much time for this part. So I want to just paint a general picture of it to give it some context. And there's a lot more to delve into here. Pluto moving into Aquarius and this transition from Capricorn back and forth into Aquarius, we can say it's an evolutionary transition. This is about liberating and totally breaking free out of the conditioned constructs, Capricorn, of the life that we've known. So Aquarius says you have the cement blocks and the fence and the gate between your house and the house next to you. And there's something else entirely in the works. You can't take that cement and then just like repaint it or reconfigure it. Sometimes you actually have to break it all down, take the gate away, and allow something new to emerge entirely. Aquarius actually corresponds to transformation, which is, trans is beyond or move across, right? Across form. Right? Moving from one form to another. Pluto is transmutation, across mutation, the genetics change. So we're looking at a reality where the entire framework of our social existence, how we've been living, there are new ways of thinking about our life. And so Pluto in Aquarius is saying evolution needs to happen now. It can feel very radical. It can feel profoundly scary in the terms of we don't have any precedent to think about where we're going relative to where we're coming from. But Aquarius is a higher level of intelligence. So it always says when we're more impersonal and detached, there's a greater potential and possibility for every facet of our life to organize itself spontaneously and organically according to the intelligence of the divine. We can think of Aquarius as the mind of God or the intelligence of creation itself, when everything's interrelated as if it's a part of one giant ecosystem. Okay, so Pluto in Aquarius is saying there's a greater evolutionary potential that reflects the inherent intelligence of our essential nature, our essential vibration, who I am as a soul individual. That's Aquarius. My unique vibration as a soul is Aquarius, and this resonates with your vibration as a soul in a very specific way. All of creation resonates with itself according to its nature as it is designed, according to the intelligence of life. This is the algorithm or the mathematics of life. That's Aquarius, okay? And it's different than our projections, our stories, okay? So as the concrete breaks up, something new comes together, but really it's just an expression of more of what is natural to existence in its relationship to itself. This can then reflect in a lot of insecurity relative to the unknown. I've never been here. This is scary. Will I still belong? Will I still have friends? How will I make things work in this new way of being? So we have to be willing to allow ourselves to evolve, in particular, to evolve our way of thinking. Relative to Saturn and Pisces moving forward, there's just so much newness. Again, that semi-sextile, that 30-degree aspect that's going to continue to expand. How do I do this? Everything is changing. And this is not just in March. March is very much an introduction to it. There's a lot of new energy, a lot of new movement. Really tune into where these 0-degree points are in our own charts. But this is a process that will continue for several months. And, at a different point, Pluto squaring the nodes later this year. It's really a powerful time. There's so much movement, and the stresses, and this is how I would define the two together. My evolutionary program is beyond what I even know how to think about. I have a reference point that I'm familiar with, but I don't understand or can't see. And so we have to become an observer of our reality and really learn to stand behind our story, meaning away from it, further back, to witness the story itself. And here I'm faced with these challenges, these problems, this calling for growth and development, and I don't even know how to do this. I don't have an answer. Right? The combination of the two is we are really being stretched now to draw upon a perspective and a way of thinking that is both higher and more evolved than anything we've seen, and also beyond our limited reference point. We have to move beyond movements, beyond conditioning, beyond the shame, beyond the lower density thoughts that we might think are helpful, but there's something greater that is more healing and more inclusive. Aquarius is us, it's community, it's togetherness, and its very essence. And then Pisces is also unity, but it's the difference between a salad and a soup. Like all the different ingredients of a salad belong together, and that's the ecosystem of life. It's the archetypes of astrology. It's Aquarius. The homogeneous nature of a soup is we are all love, right? And my awakening is your awakening. And what I see out there is what I see in here. It's forgiveness. It's recognizing our essential sameness. We are all children of the divine. We are all the same in our very essence. So there's a movement towards greater togetherness and healing. And I'll close by just saying sometimes, often, the movement towards unification seems like a movement towards disunity. Sometimes the movement towards healing feels like a movement towards sickness, right? The movement towards congruency feels like the movement towards chaos. There's a teaching from the Tao Te Ching. Lao Tzu says, to straighten, let it be bent. Right? Because if we're focusing so much on straightening, on getting all these things worked out, we'll just be applying our own limited thinking and our control and our fear and our conditioning and recreating the past, which won't work. That's the point. Right now, it's like evolutionary timing. The caterpillar is insufficient by its very nature. It has to be willing for something else. And so to let it be bent means to accept things as they are, to yield to the perfection of our life experience and heal our perception. If we're always seeing it as wrong, always seeing it as bent, always seeing it as sick or dysfunctional, and thus trying to find solutions in that perception, we're never going to heal. Say, I don't know what things are really for. I don't know the greater meaning or purpose or potential of all things. If I'm seeing something as wrong or broken, then that's where the healing is in my perception. To be well, let yourself be sick because you're not sick. And so don't try to make yourself something else. Yield ourselves to the experience of what's here now. To be found, let yourself be lost. To be congruent, let yourself feel confused. Because that's the starting point for allowing something new to come in. So we can be faced with this sense of, oh, this is hard, this is beyond what I know how to do, and that's great. Let that be so. There's a new way. And this is where the practice and the healing and the path opens up for us now.
Beautiful, beautiful. Reminds me of the Tower and the Death card in tarot.
So much so, yeah.
Yeah, it's I actually love those cards because I feel that it's the cycle and the evolution, and what comes after the tower burns to the ground, what happens after the death point, the pivot point. It's why we're here, I think. I think that's why we came in, to learn, to grow, to expand our awareness, to heal, to help others. get back home, right? And I think you gave a lot of really great examples of how to work with these cycles, to work with these cycles, to let go, to surrender, to be keenly aware of the magic that's unfolding right now.
Mhm.
And just like use that example of, don't focus on the bent item, and instead maybe just let things go a little bit and co-create with the universe to get where you ultimately want to go, without trying to control so much. Um, I have Pisces moon in the
Mhm.
10th, and I have Neptune conjunct the sun on my descendant. So I am very aware of these energies. And it's going to be a wild ride. And like I mentioned earlier, I mean, this is showing up in everyone's chart. Everyone listening to this, it's in your chart somewhere. Saturn's transiting somewhere. You have Saturn, you have Neptune, you have Pisces, you have all of it. You have all of the ingredients. And if you're feeling like you're at this crossroad in your life right now, or you're feeling like you're holding on or trying to force the bentness to straighten out, I think speaking to somebody like Ari would be great. Take a look at where it's showing up in your life. And like I mentioned at the top of the video, Ari's doing an astrology course right now. I've included those details below. Make sure you use the code Dallisa to get $50 off. But if you listen to this, and I'm sure you just got a lot out of this, I would encourage you to reach out to Ari, whether it's for a session or for the astrology class, and use this time in your life to create these open doors and newness and become the butterfly. So Ari, as we close out, I know your website is arimoshe.com. Is there anything else you'd like to share as we close?
That is all. Thank you so much, Delisa, for having me. Appreciate
Beautiful. Thank you, Ari. Yes, we'll talk soon.
it. Great.